Lake Michigan is one of the largest and most mysterious freshwater lakes in the United States. And now, deep inside it, scientists have stumbled upon something unexplainable. Vast, round craters scattered all across the lake's floor. It all started in 2022. A team of researchers wanted to map the lake's bottom and look for some shipwrecks. At first, they were sure it's going to be just some typical rocky terrain or sandy patches. But what they saw on their sonar screens stopped them cold. Strange, circular shapes that looked almost too perfect to be natural. They were hiding about 500 feet beneath the surface, in places where the water turns dark and impenetrable. Those guys are huge, ranging from 300 to 600 feet wide. They also plunge nearly 40 feet deep. And there are dozens of them, neatly arranged like some footprints. But the team had no idea what these things were. Then, in August 2024, the mystery only deepened. Using a remotely operated vehicle, they got a closer look at these formations. There were about 40 of them. No one had ever seen anything quite like this before in the Great Lakes. What could have created those craters? Could they be ancient? Perhaps remnants of some geological event lost to time? If that's the case, it's weird how long these holes have likely been sitting there, undisturbed. Theories started popping up. One possibility was that they could be sinkholes or dolines. Those are basically holes that suddenly appear in the ground when the surface layer collapses. The rock beneath the surface, often made of limestone, gets slowly dissolved by water over time, creating voids underground. When the surface of those voids can no longer hold its own weight, it caves in, and this forms a hole. Think of it like when you poke a straw through the lid of a drink. Sinkholes can be small dips or huge, spanning up to 2,000 feet. They can happen gradually or all at once. Sometimes they can swallow entire cars or even buildings. And Lake Michigan sits on limestone bedrock. It erodes pretty easily when water flows through it. Sinkholes like these have already been found in Lake Huron, and they look kinda similar. But there are some plot holes, no pun intended, with this theory. For example, it's wild how they all would be so huge. It's also weird and pretty rare for sinkholes to occur in a lake bed. They also kinda resemble a straight pattern. They seem to extend generally southward, forming a loose line, which is pretty weird. If these are sinkholes, then they're definitely not playing the usual geological rules. Though it might be some new, unusual process at play beneath the lake's surface that we haven't discovered yet. There's another theory though: glaciers. Glaciers are wild rivers of ice. They covered much of the Earth during the last ice age, and they're incredibly powerful. While they might move slowly, sometimes only a few inches per day, they have such immense weight that they can reshape entire landscapes over thousands of years. Glaciers can grind and scoop the land beneath them. They're basically like colossal bulldozers. Their weight, combined with the slow but steady movement, grounds down everything beneath them: rocks, soil, even bedrock. This can create deep gouges in the Earth's surface, called glacial troughs. During the last ice age, there were lots of glaciers all over the northern US, including the Great Lakes region. If they moved across what is now Lake Michigan, they could have carved out these deep holes. Glaciers often move in a pretty straight path. As they move, they cause terrain to erode, but the resulting erosion varies based on terrain. Sometimes there are places where the bedrock is softer or fractured, and these places are more easily carved and crushed by the glacier. That could explain why some holes could be bigger and deeper than others. Harder bedrock is less affected. But usually this leads to rounded, crescent-shaped depressions known as chatter marks. Those marks are more like grooves rather than circular, big craters like those in Lake Michigan. Once the glaciers melted, the Great Lakes themselves formed. If the craters were formed by them, they may have filled with water, becoming part of the Michigan Lake, Though this theory is more like a speculation, so we need more evidence. But there's another layer to this mystery. The craters are not just curious geological formations. They actually may hold valuable clues about early life on Earth. Parts of Lake Michigan, especially dark ones, are relatively low in oxygen. It's like a lighter version of deep ocean environments that often have very little of this element. For example, hydrothermal vents deep in the ocean, underwater openings in the Earth's crust with some hot, mineral-rich water that are often very low in oxygen. But some organisms love places like these. For example, opossum shrimp. Teeny tiny shrimp-like creatures that love cold, deep waters. They get their name because they have a pouch to carry their young until they're ready to be on their own, like an opossum. Or deep-water sculpin fish, small bottom-dwelling fish that also enjoys cold lakes. They're well adapted to living in dark waters and usually stay close to the lake bed. And weird organisms like invasive quagga mussels, which kinda look like shells. These are small freshwater mussels that have spread there to the Great Lakes. They attach themselves to hard surfaces and can cause problems for ecosystems by competing with native species for food and space. All these guys could be in Lake Michigan, and even more. There might be microbes or even bacteria that are specially adapted to these harsh conditions, just like it was in Lake Huron. There's only a handful of creatures that could survive deep within these craters, and studying them could give us insight into how life once flourished in Earth's ancient, oxygen-poor oceans. That's because it's in places similar to these, where some of the earliest life forms thrived. Early Earth had an atmosphere with little oxygen, although it was much more hot, and ancient microbes adapted to this. The Great Lakes, especially Lake Michigan, have always had a bit of a ghostly reputation. Like even this mission was organized to study the shipwrecks. There were about 6,000 of them in the Great Lakes. Many of these wrecks are still sitting on the lake beds, preserved by the cold, fresh waters. And shipwrecks aren't the only strange things tied to the Great Lakes. Over the years, there have been stories of unexplained disappearances. Boats and even planes have vanished without a trace. The lakes, often calm on the surface, can suddenly turn dangerous with unpredictable storms and massive waves, leading to these mysterious events. Not even mentioning all the creepy stuff people noticed there over the centuries, such as ghostly lights above water or bizarre weather patterns like eerie, sudden fogs that seem to appear out of nowhere. In 2007, they even discovered some prehistoric structure that looks like Stonehenge there. Well, it was way smaller, but still. It lay about 40 feet below the surface in the heart of Grand Traverse Bay, and it's speculated to be about 9,000 years old, way older than Stonehenge. Looks like this is a print of those who lived in the area thousands of years ago. These massive stones are arranged in a careful, winding pattern stretching over a mile. They range in size from basketballs to compact cars. But one, in particular, stands out. A boulder 3.5 to 4 feet tall, 5 feet wide. It's etched with the image of a mastodon, a creature that roamed the Earth about 11,000 years ago before it went extinct. It probably sank there during the end of the last ice age we mentioned. This period had reshaped the region. This place is underwater now, but back in the day, it was still dry land. So the stones were probably created by people who lived there, though we're not sure why. Were they used as hunting blinds? Or was it some sort of an ancient calendar? Who knows? Only about 15% of the Great Lakes floors have been explored. Now, scientists are gearing up for a deeper dive into this mystery, both literally and figuratively. They want to analyze the lake beds surrounding the craters, hoping that maybe something in the environment around them might have caused them to appear. They have initiatives like Lakebed 2030. These missions should map the entire underwater landscape. This would help us learn tons of interesting stuff about Lake Michigan and our planet's past. Who knows what other secrets these dark waters hide?
You're going to Ilha de Queimada Grande, one of the most dangerous islands in the world. There, you find yourself among rainforests, huge rocks, and grasslands. The place is home to birds, locusts, and giant cockroaches. But there's one more animal, and because of it, the island got its notorious reputation. Snakes live there, and a lot of them. So many that the place is also known as Snake Island. Will you survive there? Located just 20 miles away from the coast of Brazil, the island has an area of 43 hectares, or over 100 acres. It probably got cut off from the mainland after the last ice age. The snakes were also separated from most other animal species. They didn't have competitors and had an unlimited source of food. In such a small area, there are up to 4,000 snakes. That's one snake for every 10 square feet. It would be a difficult feat not to come across a snake on this island. Not only is this snake, the golden lancehead, one of the most numerous on the island, but it's also a highly venomous pit viper species. And it's also one of the most venomous in all of Latin America. Its venom is so potent due to the isolation of the species, with only birds sharing the land with them. To catch these birds, the snake's venom needed to become extra strong. And indeed, since they got separated from their distant relatives, their venom has become up to 5 times more powerful. Most of the time, these snakes hide in the trees or amongst leaves on the ground. If you find yourself stranded here, you'll want to keep yourself a safe distance away. Snakes mainly use their sense of smell and rely on vibrations. If you get too close to one, either stand still or slowly walk away. If you make too many vibrations, this will make them feel threatened, causing them to strike. If you spot them a safe distance away, or if you're walking toward tall grass, stamp your feet a couple of times. This will notify snakes of your presence. They won't risk taking down prey larger than they are and will likely slither away. Carrying a stick is always a good idea, just in case you happen to come across a snake accidentally. This way, you'll have an extension of your arm that cannot be bitten. This simple thing might save your life. A stick with a V shape on the end will give you even more advantage. Even if a snake starts acting aggressively, holding it down will stop it in its tracks. But whatever happens, don't try to pick it up. Okay, but what if you get bitten? The chances are pretty high on this island, of course. First of all, don't try to get the venom out on your own. Make sure you call emergency services immediately. And once help is on the way, apply a wide bandage. A piece of clothing will do if you don't have anything else. Don't try to chase the snake trying to identify the species. Emergency services know how to figure out what venom it is. Now, just keep calm and wait for help. You might be wondering who you can call on this abandoned island. Well, since it's strictly prohibited to visit this place, there are signs advising to stay away all over the island, along with a number you can call if you run into trouble. Let's say you've successfully avoided getting bitten. The next thing to consider is what you can eat there. Snake Island was previously known as Ilha de Queimada Grande, where queimada is Portuguese for forest being lit up, or forest fire. The reason for that was the fact that the entire island was deliberately set on fire to make room for a banana plantation. Unfortunately, the banana business didn't turn out to be a success, probably because farmers got sick and tired of snakes. But some banana trees still thrive today, and they can provide you with some much-needed nutrients. You'll also want some protein in your diet throughout your stay. Luckily, along with the snakes trapped on the island, there are also cockroaches. These giant prehistoric-looking roaches come out at night to feed on plants. Get that barbecue started and enjoy the rare delicacy this island provides. A great way to survive on the island is to avoid it altogether. If by chance you happen to be sailing past, keep in mind that this place was once connected to the mainland. Rocks beneath the waves are very likely to damage the bottom of your boat if you get too close. Make sure you keep an appropriate distance when traveling past. Sure, this island is intriguing, but please remember that no matter how close you get to it, you won't be able to see snakes from the boat. You can only see these creatures if you get close enough, which you really shouldn't do. And it's not only reptiles that make this location dangerous. Pirates visit the island quite often. Not the sea shanty singing peg-legged arr pirates, but bio-pirates who come there to capture the very thing that makes it so dangerous. They come there for snakes, to catch them and sell them illegally. Since the island got cut off around 11,000 years ago, the golden lancehead has evolved within its own unique habitat. So, although there are many reptiles on this island, they're still an endangered species. Due to their limited numbers, their value is very high, reaching up to $30,000 on illegal markets, which gives biopirates the motivation to catch them. I can think of better ways to make a living. Anyway, let's say you've got all the resources necessary to survive in one of the most dangerous places on Earth. Do you think you would manage this feat? Perhaps you think it's impossible. You'd be surprised at how possible it can be, if you know what you're doing. It turns out many have visited this scary place before. Research teams often come there. They study the golden lancehead snake, its environment, and its food sources for conservation purposes. But scientists always make sure there's a doctor on the team. There's also a lighthouse on Snake Island. It had been operated by people until the 1920s. Then it became automated. One guess why. Brazilian authorities visit the lighthouse once a year to make sure it's still functional. Locals on the mainland know the reputation of the island, so the stories of people going missing are minimal. But one group of fishers once got too close to the island. As they were sailing along their normal route, they accidentally neared the shore. Their boat hit a rock under the waves and began filling with water. As the boat was quickly sinking, the men had only two options: to try to survive in the rough sea or swim to the shores of Snake Island. It was a hard choice to make. After all, they had heard the stories, and it wasn't just about snakes. Rumor had it that the island was cursed. Regardless of the stories, the fishers chose to take their chances with Snake Island. After making it to the shore, they tried to be careful. Their knowledge of the island could help them survive. Most importantly, they knew to avoid the rainforest at all costs. As the men got hungry, they carefully walked along the edge of the forest, warily collecting bananas. They were mostly sitting, waiting, and conserving their energy. They could only drink water when it rained. It was just enough to sustain them. They slept on the beach, unprotected from the elements and weather. And all the time, they were so close to the comfort of the lighthouse or caves. They were probably overly cautious, but it was either enduring some discomfort or risking their lives for a dry bed. They didn't yield to the temptation. They managed to survive for 3 days without being bitten by a snake. After that, a passing boat finally rescued them. So, now you know, anything is possible.
As you take your first step off the plane, an eager crowd of emperor penguins surrounds you, pushing and shoving, all wanting your autograph. No, wait, it's worse. You're hit with a chill like you've never felt before. Even though you're equipped with over 20 pounds of gear, the icy wind still finds you. The blinding sunlight obscures your view, but it doesn't help you to warm up at all. Yep, this is your first day at the South Pole, and it wasn't easy to get here. You meet your coordinator, ready to begin your new life in the most remote place in the entire world. Grabbing your luggage from the plane, you look around at your companions. You all went through the same rigorous physical and psychological testing to prepare you for this uniquely challenging environment. The program had to make sure that you all had what it takes to handle months of isolation, freezing temperatures, and unfamiliar night cycles. The South Pole only has a single sunset and sunrise across an entire year. This isn't even mentioning the physical tests you had to pass. Researchers need a clean bill of health when they set off because there's usually only one doctor on the base. You hesitate at first, seeing nothing before you but an endless icy desert. But it isn't long before you notice a large building in the distance. This is the Amundsen Scott South Pole Station. After a long walk through the deep snow, you reach it. One step through the doors and you immediately stop shivering. It's so warm that everyone is walking around in t-shirts. You almost forget that you are in the coldest place on the planet. It surprises you to see how many people come to greet you. And they're not penguins. These researchers are stationed for the entire summer, studying things in the South Pole's extreme climates. You're officially welcome with an introductory slideshow in the conference room. The basic ground rules can help you in case things go, south. Everything is organized from provisions to waste management. The station recycles everything it can, even different kinds of batteries. Anything that can't be recycled is sent on a voyage all the way across the ocean to a dump in America. Once you're finished, the coordinator escorts you to your dorm, the place you'll call home for the duration of your stay. You're excited to tell your family and friends how amazing it is at the South Pole, and luckily, the station comes equipped with internet access. As soon as you open up YouTube and click on a video, though, you're greeted with a buffering sign. The lack of satellites over Antarctica means you'll need to get used to slow internet for a while. From your window, you can see the snowscape spreading out before you. Unlike the area around the coast of the continent, the South Pole is completely devoid of life. No plants or animals are able to brave the conditions this far inland. Other than the occasional bird blown off course by the wind, the entire area is just a deserted sea of ice. The Amundsen Scott South Pole Station stands alone in this desert. The base camp needs all kinds of people so it can survive in the unique environment. Cooks, plumbers, electricians, medics, and other staff are all required to keep things working, so the scientists can do their research. You might be surprised at how nice the living conditions are for all these workers. Sure, you'd find the usual research facilities and the laboratories, but there are also many rooms set aside for fun activities. The base has its own basketball court, where different departments can regularly compete. There are even whole rooms set aside for music and arts. Most importantly, there's a dentist who can make sure your teeth aren't damaged from all that chattering. Let's not forget the cafeteria that serves dishes from all over the world. Craving a delicious green salad? Then you head down to the internal greenhouse to pick some fresh fruits and veggies. You'll find tomatoes, avocados, lettuce, and even tropical fruits. The greenhouse might also be the most humid place on the entire continent. Amazingly, it's so effective that it can produce around 20 pounds of goodies per week. There won't be any water shortages either. The base is planted on an almost infinite supply of fresh water. The crews simply feed Antarctic ice into their specially designed generators that melt and filter it into clean drinking water. If the stress of the extreme climate ever gets to you, you can just hop into the sauna. Detoxing in the South Pole is a one-of-a-kind experience. Now that you're familiar with the facilities and can get around with ease, it's time to work. The base is mainly dedicated to astronomy because the crystal-clear Antarctic sky allows researchers to capture amazing images of space. Antarctica is perfect for these pictures because it's the driest place on Earth. There's almost no water vapor in the atmosphere. You're here for another reason, though. The station is also used to study volcanic activity. Scientists have discovered 91 volcanoes buried underneath the Antarctic ice sheet, and it's your job to collect samples from one of them. Back out into the frigid cold, your teeth begin to chatter again. Luckily, this is nowhere near as bad as the lowest temperature ever recorded here. The South Pole has been as cold as minus 120 degrees Fahrenheit. That's so cold that if you threw a glass of boiling water into the air, it would turn to ice before it hit the ground. It would be almost impossible to even leave the station at that temperature. The warmest the South Pole has ever been was 10 degrees Fahrenheit, and that was at the peak of summer. As you approach the digging site, you start to notice changes in the scenery. There are hilltops and steep ledges all around. As you got closer to the coast, you begin to see more animal life. You can even see a colony of penguins out in the distance. You scout the area around the site, perhaps expecting to see an enormous mountain spewing lava from its tip. In fact, there's nothing in sight at all. That's because the volcano is right beneath your feet. It's part of the enormous landmass below the ice that the continent is famous for. Antarctica might just look like a giant field of ice, but there's actually a huge continent underneath. That means it has volcanoes, mountains, and valleys, like any other continent. Scientists have recently discovered that the Antarctic landmass has the lowest point on the planet, as well as huge mountain ranges. If any of the numerous volcanoes were to erupt, it would melt a huge part of the surface ice and increase the spill of ice into the ocean. The sea level would rise and flood coastal areas around the world. The ocean waters would also be disrupted, putting marine life at risk. You can count yourself lucky, though. All of these volcanoes are dormant at the moment, so you can begin your work. You begin to unpack your equipment and start digging. You and your team set up a small tent to try to stay warm while you monitor the progress on some portable screens. Your stomach rumbles and your team rummage for the sandwiches they brought with them. There was no need to carry them in a cooler for obvious reasons. Smelling the food, Antarctic birds begin to circle above you as you eat. As you lay down to sleep, your 3 layers of clothes begin to feel like nothing more than a t-shirt. You put even more on and zip the tent up so you can finally get some rest. Strong wind buffets the tent, and you think you hear a growling outside. You panic, but then you remember there are no polar bears in Antarctica. In fact, there are no large predators at all, so you can sleep easy. You wake up, and the sky looks the same as it did all night. Each day lasts 6 months on this continent. Your work is done, so you can pack up and begin the long journey back to the station. Hours later, you get back to the more familiar flatlands of the South Pole and, eventually, the warmth of the research station. Your first few days on the station were a great success. You might have helped us to understand just a little bit more about this mysterious continent. There are sure to be many more surprises hidden under the ice sheet, though. Who knows what we might find in the future?
Why is Australia so strangely empty? Why haven't we discovered so much of the ocean? Is our planet a perfect sphere? And was the Earth once more purple than green? I bet you didn't know these facts about our planet. So let's find it all out. Australia is really massive. To make it easy to understand its size, it's nearly as large as the entirety of Europe. Home to around 26 million people, Australia is among the countries with the least population per area. It's ranked only 55th for the highest population in the world, while it has the 6th largest land area. Why is so much of it empty? A good guess would be the many dangerous animals hiding behind every rock. At least this is enough for me to avoid Australia. But there's one specific reason to explain this. The dryness of Australia ensures that 85% of the population lives within 30 miles of the coast, and 80% of them live along the eastern side, where rainfall is more common. But although there is an overall lack of rainfall, only 20% of Australia is unlivable desert, and only 40% is considered not habitable by human standards. The water consumption is actually higher than their average rainfall each year, but there is a further ancient water source hidden way below, which can support a much larger population. It's one of the largest underground freshwater resources in the world, the Great Artesian Basin. It covers a staggering 656,000 square miles, which is 1/5 the size of Australia. It holds enough water to cover the Earth under a 1.5 feet deep layer of water. Or, more usefully, it could provide enough water for thirsty Australians over the next 1,500 years. Only 6.5% of Australia has soil suitable for farming, so this doesn't seem like a huge amount. But in case you forgot, Australia is big, and this small percentage is about the size of France. With this massive area available for farming, Australia has more than enough to feed its population, with a further 70% of agriculture products that are exported overseas. So, with plenty of land, food, and water, why are the population figures so low? A very slow migration process is the reason. First, only people from the United Kingdom lived there. Then, they opened their borders to other Europeans, and this restriction remained in place until 1973. You would think almost 200 years would be enough time for a lot of people to migrate, but Australia was just so far away. The risk of traveling such a long way and the cost of the journey meant that people from Europe prefer the shorter and cheaper options to migrate elsewhere, like Canada or the USA. For the past 2,000 years, people have understood that Earth is round. But did you know that it's not a perfect sphere? Through the wobbly rotation of Earth, our planet constantly changes its size, very slowly of course. The North and South poles are surprisingly flat. Earth is pretty much like a ball being squished. Imagine there's a giant hand with the fingers pressing at both poles. Because of this pressure, the equator pushes a little outwards. Along with an uneven gravitational field, Earth has loads of gravity glitches, some positive and others negative, creating an uneven, rocky, and bumpy surface. Some places on Earth have more gravity than others. If you weighed yourself along the equator, you would weigh 0.5% less than at the poles. Not a whole lot, and definitely not worth the trip to change your weight. If you were to measure the length from the center of the Earth towards the furthest point of Earth, you would be shocked that Mount Everest isn't at the end of it. Instead, it's along the equator, which is the pushed-out part. Ecuador's mountain Chimborazo would actually be the tallest point on Earth, as it's the furthest from the center. We still have around 80% of the ocean to map, which is crazy considering how much of the solar system we've explored in comparison. But we're still aware of many of the unbelievable details about the ocean. It covers over 80% of the world's surface, where 94% of the Earth's wildlife lives. And from some of the life in it, up to 80% of the world's oxygen is produced mainly from plankton, algae, and bacteria. One of the most famous, already mapped places is the Mariana Trench. It's the deepest point on Earth, as low as almost 7 miles deep. That's a huge, 5 times the length of the Grand Canyon and deeper than Mount Everest is tall. It's also home to one of the most ancient seabeds on Earth, casually laying low for about 180 million years. The pressure at the bottom is over 1,000 bars, but although this is 1,000 times more than normal pressure, life still flourishes here. Throughout the ocean, there is an estimated over 3 million shipwrecks lying in the murky depths. Countless artifacts sit there untouched, and there could be more than all the world's museums. The mid-ocean ridge is the longest in the world, reaching 40,000 miles. That's almost 10 times the size of the Andes, the longest mountain range on land. The sun is the reason behind the blue and aqua colors of the ocean. This color isn't from the reflection of the sky, though they are both blue for the same reason. The surface of our planet receives white light from the sun, and it absorbs the orange, red, and yellow light stronger. It doesn't absorb the blue light so much, so it returns to how we see it. Of course, this only occurs based on how pure the water is. If the water is full of mud or algae, they scatter the light and overpower the water's natural blueness. There are many factors that determine what color we see on our planet. Could you believe that the Earth was green before? Instead, it was purple. Chlorophyll in our atmosphere absorbs mainly blue and red wavelengths from the sun and reflects the green ones to what we see our planet as today. Long ago, ancient microbes called retinal dominated the Earth instead of chlorophyll. They absorbed green light and reflected red and violet light. Those microbes had a simpler structure, so they were easier to produce in the low oxygen environment of the early Earth. They provided our planet with a purplish color instead of green. But chlorophyll is more efficient, and as the Earth was developing, it eventually took over. Imagine that billions of years ago, faraway observers could see our home as a small purple dot. I wonder if we could have also been purple. Probably not. The biggest tree on Earth is a giant sequoia named General Sherman. It stands over 280 feet, almost reaching the height of a 26-story building. They believe it to be 2,700 years old, with a circumference of 1,000 inches. Its weight is a staggering 1,800 tons. That's heavy, but it isn't the heaviest living thing on Earth. In Utah, a huge grove of trees called Pando works like a single colony of trees. The massive root system connects all of them together with up to 47,000 stems. It weighs up to 6,000 tons and is 80,000 years old. It makes it the oldest living thing known to humans. Now, what about the biggest area of one being? Off the coast of Western Australia, a seaweed grows to an unthinkable size. The Poseidon's ribbon weed has been growing for 4,500 years, spreading underground clone shoots. It's all connected and shares the same DNA with most of its shoots. It covers a massive 77 square miles, the same size as 28,000 soccer fields, or the size of Nebraska. And it won't stop there either, as it continues to grow by 2 feet each year. It's hard to even picture the scale of these enormous beings. Now, just imagine if they were all purple.
Wow, talk about noisy! Toadfish have a unique ability. They can create a very strong sound. The human ear usually can't hear it, especially if only one fish is making the sound. But if many fish are making the sound at the same time, well, it's going to be hard to forget, and you may not be able to stop hearing it. Toadfish are a common part of the fauna off the coast of Sausalito in California, and every year thousands of them gather in the shoals to party and scream. Together, they create a collective sound that can be easily heard by those in the houses near the shore. The noise, which can be described as a low hum, can even penetrate into the city center. Some people get bothered by this constant humming. This is a unique natural phenomenon, but there's a catch. At some point, the fish swim away from the shore, but the sound remains. Also, scientists have proven that this fish-made noise can't spread through the city, and many residents of the coastal areas don't hear it. But still, some people continue to hear this strange hum. In a similar case, imagine that you've moved to a small village in Scotland. You rent a house, have dinner, and go to bed. As you're settling into sleep, a strange hum permeates your room. It sounds like someone started their truck somewhere in the distance. The sound is similar to the sound of a low, loud bass that comes from a speaker. The hum keeps you awake. You get migraines and even feel nauseous. In the morning, you find out that some other locals also hear this terrible buzzing. They tell you about a huge factory located nearby. Machines, engines, steam boilers, big air vents, and generators emit a loud, heavy hum that passes through the air. Sound waves spread throughout the village and annoy people with a sharp sense of hearing. You've been hearing this sound for several days and suffering from insomnia. Then, one day, the factory goes bankrupt. All the workers leave their positions and turn off all the engines and fans. Great, you'll finally sleep in peace. But you know what? The sound doesn't disappear. It follows you wherever you are. And it's not about the factory or the fish or the truck engine. Imagine that you're walking down the streets of a small English town. There are a lot of planes flying right above you. The hum they make follows you. Even in bed you can hear it. You wonder if there's an airport nearby. You ask the locals and find out there's not even a runway here. But where does the sound come from? You raise your head to look up and see a clear sky. There are no planes, but there's noise. And you're not the only one who hears it. Some locals are sure that the hum comes from high-speed traffic on the highway. Thousands of cars drive in two directions and leave massive sound waves behind. But at night, there are no cars there, and the sound remains. Maybe you're going mad. People's stories about the hum save you from this madness, and it's not just the residents of this town that know about it. About 4% of people on the planet hear the hum. Strangers tell each other about the hum that prevents them from sleeping and concentrating on something. The sound follows them everywhere and doesn't stop. Some people hear it in certain places, so they move to other cities. Maybe you're hearing it right now and not paying attention. But be careful. If you recognize it once, you won't be able to stop hearing it. There's a website and a forum on the internet dedicated to the hum. People from all over the world put geolocations in places where they heard this mysterious phenomenon. You can find thousands of these coordinates on the site and even add your own. People describe different levels of noise and share their sources. Some theories say that the hum is the sound of our planet coming from the core. Someone else is sure that it comes from the atmosphere. Scientists have even been consulted, but they also don't know the reason for this phenomenon. People use high-frequency microphones and amplifiers to record the hum. Almost everywhere, they detect a low-frequency vibration that is practically impossible for the human ear to catch. It mixes with the sound of cars, printers in the office, and subway trains. Sometimes people stop hearing it, but the hum increases when they lie in bed. Many records about the hum say that people hear it in industrial cities. Sometimes these sound seekers manage to find the source. They ended up being factories with running generators where the sound was getting into the ventilation system and where the fans spread it outside the building. When the generator stopped working, the sound disappeared. But these are rare cases. More often, no one can find the source of hum. One of the most famous places where you can catch it is in the city of Taos in New Mexico. About 2% of locals hear a strange buzzing every day. Some tourists experience it too. Scientists came to the city to study this mystery, but found no explanation. Some theories say the usual acoustics of this place cause the hum. Some folks think it's just a hallucination or the power of suggestion. Everyone talks so much about the hum that the brain creates an illusion of a sound that doesn't exist. Locals believe the nature of the buzzing is mystical and associated with bad spirits. Whatever it is, no one has found out the truth yet. The hum that people hear all over the world may be the result of seismic activity in the tectonic plates under the ocean waters. Huge chunks of the Earth's crust are slowly moving and colliding with each other. This creates a noise that reaches us in the form of a hum. But why do only a few people hear it? Perhaps about 4% of the world's population has a unique sense of hearing. In any case, scientists haven't been able to confirm the tectonic plate theory either. Some researchers point to submarines as the reason. They use low-frequency radio signals to communicate around the world. These signals spread over the surface and can affect the human body. When the ear catches these sound waves, it reacts and causes vibrations similar to humming. This happens because low-frequency sound energy collides with the soft tissues of the skull and stimulates the auditory nerve. In fact, it's not even a sound. It's a hallucination that is created by your brain. But still, no one can confirm this theory either. Perhaps thunderstorms can create the hum phenomenon. About 8 million lightning strikes hit the Earth every day. Some impact creates a powerful electromagnetic charge. Lightning penetrates the air and makes it resonate between the Earth's surface and the ionosphere. Yeah, it sounds complicated, but the principle is simple. Imagine that you're blowing onto the neck of a bottle. Hear this low hum? Lightning works similarly with air. And that's just one hit. Imagine millions of these strikes. The sound waves spread all over the planet, and some people hear them. Lightning constantly strikes all the time, so the hum never stops. In 1973, scientists put forward a theory that the reason for the hum is the jet stream shearing against slower-moving air. In simple words, wind and fast air flows intersect slower ones. As a result, a whistling sound appears, and electric towers and power lines amplify it. By the way, the first reports of the hum appeared in the 70s. People learned about this phenomenon from the small British city of Bristol. Dozens of residents heard this strange noise in different parts of the town. In the beginning, they ignored it. Then the sound became increasingly more irritable. It prevented people from working and living their everyday lives. They couldn't sleep and couldn't concentrate on anything. There was a warehouse with industrial fans in a neighboring town. The locals were sure that this was the reason for the hum. The warehouse stopped working a few years later, but the sound remained. You may even be able to hear it right now if you visit the city. There are many theories about the hum, but you can reduce almost half of them thanks to one factor. Tectonic plates, seismic activity, lightning strikes, the Earth's crust, and resonating air are logical explanations. But look at all the records about the noise. People hadn't mentioned this until the 70s. If this phenomenon had appeared earlier, many newspapers would have written about it. Apparently, the hum is not a mystery of nature. Perhaps this is a consequence of all of our technological achievements. Factories, power lines, airplanes, cars, ships, trains, microwaves, and generators create an imperceptible background noise that most people ignore. We're so used to all these noises that we have forgotten what silence is. Perhaps our brain made the hum inside our heads to respond to our noisy world. If you start to listen carefully right now, what kind of sounds will you hear? Where are they coming from? And is there the hum among them?